It's about frickin' time. Inspired by films like Twin Peaks and especially Jacob's Ladder, Silent Hill 2 took the horror genre by storm 23 years ago. Where the first game was mostly focused about the themes of occultism and religion, Silent Hill 2 was all about human psychology. Sure, there were games like this before, like Phantasmagoria, D, and Corpse Party, but none of these games made you feel the kind of miserable dread that Silent Hill 2 did. The music, sound design, and story blew everyone's socks off back in 2001, and a lot of these aspects still hold up to this day. But sadly, the controls, camera angle, and campy voice acting didn't exactly age well. Yeah, it's a bit dated, but hey, it's a product of its time and it's a good one at that. Anyways, you'd think a game this cherished would have gotten a proper remaster sooner. I mean, sure, we got the HD collection, but we don't talk about that. And then we have PT getting canceled, Konami kicking Kojima to the curb, and then Konami turning Silent Hill into some stupid pachinko machine. They were smoking crack. Yeah, a lot of people lost hope after all that, myself included. But fast forwarding to October 2022, something changed. Wait. Who was that? Oh no. So why does the fact that Bloober team is working on this worry me so much? Well, the answer is simple. I don't think they're cut out for it.
You are not ready.
I've got nothing against Bloober, but I will say that Blair Witch disappointed the hell out of me. Their most popular game, Layers of Fear, is cool for what it is, but at the end of the day, it's really just a narrative-focused horror-themed walking simulator. Observer is much of the same with the cyberpunk theme, and The Medium I haven't actually played, but it does look kinda interesting. My point behind all of this is that these games are fine for what they are, but Silent Hill 2 is such a leap compared to what they've made before that I couldn't help but doubt them. And to further add to my skepticism, you have the shift to third person, which made me fear that this was gonna feel more like Resident Evil with a Silent Hill coat of paint on it. And then there's just Konami being Konami, and well, that alone sketched everyone out. And I'm definitely not the only person that felt this way, so only thing left to do was to wait, keep expectations low, hopes high. Maybe something good will come out of it. I have never in my life been more happy to be wrong about something. This game is f***ing peak. I had an absolute blast playing Silent Hill 2 Remake. Bloober, I am sorry I doubted you. Please don't make me pay $80 to play the game early. I'm gonna be breaking down my experience into 3 segments. How the game looks and sounds, how it plays and feels, and I'm also going to talk about the narrative a bit as it's been slightly changed. If you're only interested in 1 or 2 of these things, I'll leave some timestamps for the video so that you could skip to it. I'm going to do my best to not let nostalgia cloud my judgment, and I'm also not going to be tiptoeing around the game's story. It's 23 years old, so if you don't want to be spoiled, then go play either version of the game. They're great. Anyway, let's start with how the game looks and sounds. This game looks fantastic, and I love all the attention to the little details and things like enemies leaving trails of blood when they're injured, James getting filthier and more worn down as the game goes on, Angela's nails being all chewed up, and the blood on James's clothes getting dry and dark rather than just disappearing like most games. The lighting, especially indoors, makes everything way creepier. The enemies look disgusting as they should, and the characters and facial animations all look fantastic. And I've seen people complain about Angela and Maria's updated looks, and to those people I say, dude, they look fine. Get over yourself. What's important is that they're easily identifiable as their original counterpart. That's what matters.
It's a classic.
The devs did an awesome job with the graphics, and they did it without compromising the style of the original game. The creepy and unsettling environments are made even more creepy and unsettling by the fantastic sound design. This shit is peak horror. The ambience alone makes me feel like I'm gonna get jumped at any given moment. There were a couple moments where I was in zero danger whatsoever, but because of all the sounds I kept hearing around me, I felt like I was about to get my head ripped off. Whoa! Okay. What the hell was that? Jesus! Hell, one of my absolute favorite moments during my playthrough was when I walked into Mary's room, the one that you see her at the end of the game in, and you hear her breathe. What the fuck was that? It's super subtle, but that scared the hell out of me. But there was one thing about the sound design that I didn't like all that much, and that is the guns. This is just a personal pet peeve of mine. This isn't like any game I play, but I've been around guns my whole life, and let me tell you, they are loud. For example, here's some footage of me and my friend on my birthday this year. Now here's the audio of the shotgun in the game. Weak as fuck. Just a minor annoyance, but other than that, audio is good. Now on to the gameplay. As I mentioned before, I was scared that they were gonna turn this game into Resident Evil with that shift to third person. But I personally think they pulled it off really well, but I will say this is probably gonna be the most divisive part of the game. Hell, me and my girlfriend spent like 30 minutes debating which point of view was better. So because it's so subjective, let's just leave it at that. But when it comes to the combat, I'm sorry if you feel the other way, but I personally think that the remake combat is objectively better. It's got some flaws, for sure, but I'll get to that in a second. In the original, you would just point yourself in the direction of an enemy and then James would do all the work for you. Or more realistically, you just ran past everything because the AI had a very hard time chasing you down. Or even more realistically, Maria would stand in the way and she would get a bullet into the back of the head like she f***ing deserves because she doesn't have any kind of spatial awareness. Meanwhile, in the remake, that is definitely not the case. You can still run past them if you're out in the open, but when you're inside a building, oh man, these assholes mean business. Enemies are gonna be dodging your attacks, running away to set up an ambush, and even parrying you. Holy shit. However, aside from the free camera, Bloober added one more thing to our arsenal. Iframe dodges. God damn it. Oh, you wanna fucking brawl, bitch? Fucking Unfortunately, this is where some of the flaws start to show up. There are only like 4 enemy types in the game with a couple of variations to some of them, and there's just too much combat in general. Because of how often you fight monsters in this game, I got used to the combat and all their movesets pretty quickly. By the time I got to the end of the hospital, I had every moveset down and I was just whooping ass every single time it was a 1v1, which in turn led to me having all the ammo and health items I could ever need. And I was on the hardest difficulty on top of all that. So yeah, the combat isn't really that difficult, but it's not bad. It's got some flaws, of course, but it's still fun. I was never bored playing this game. The real downside is that a lot of the tension is killed as a result. By the time I finished the game, I killed almost 400 enemies, while as in my recent-ish playthrough of the original, I killed like 40. Maybe. And even though I didn't really fear combat in this game that much, I was still checking every single corner in every single room because of one enemy in particular. The goddamn mannequins. You. No matter how confident I am with the combat, I will always check every corner of every room in fear that these things are gonna jump out from behind me and punch me in the back of the head. And I loved it. I absolutely love the mannequins. They're easily the best enemy in the game. I would say the best way they could have improved upon it is if they reduced the amount of enemies in the game but made them a lot tougher, a lot more of a threat, and also reduced the amount of health and ammo you get, because I pretty much never ran out of it past the apartments. I only died a handful of times playing this game, and every single time I did, it was because I got jumped by like 4 or 5 enemies at once. So overall, combat's not bad, it's serviceable, it could be better, but it's inoffensive. Now let's move on to my favorite thing in any game. Boss fights. If you watched my Evil Within video last year, then you will know that I love boss fights, especially in horror games. And I'm happy to say that Bloober definitely did not disappoint with these ones. There are only 6 bosses just like in the original, and they've all seen massive improvements. The flesh lip has been reduced to 1 and has been given a second phase where it jumps off the ceiling and starts kicking your ass. The abstract daddies had some of the biggest improvements, where instead of fighting it in a box, you have multi-phases where you're fighting it in hallways and it's constantly busting down walls trying to get to you. And unfortunately, the Mary boss fight is a little bit disappointing. It's still fun and cool, but she really is just a combination of her original boss and the new flesh lip. Nothing really that special. They aren't all that difficult, but damn are they a spectacle. And this being Silent Hill and not Resident Evil, I find that to be a lot more important than anything. And you already know I'm gonna talk about our boy Pyramid Head. Oh my goodness, was he awesome in this. Every time I ran into Pyramid Head, I said a variation of the exact same thing. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. But if there's one thing I definitely did not expect whatsoever coming into this, is that Pyramid Head wasn't gonna be my favorite boss in the game. Hands down, no questions asked, it's Eddie. The showdown with Eddie was super intense, and the dialogue in the fight was just phenomenal. Chef's kiss. And I gotta say, I do appreciate them replacing the first phase with a cutscene. I think it works out a lot better here. And speaking of changes and additions to the narrative, how about we start talking about some of them? I'm really happy to say that there is absolutely no cut content in this game. The story is all here, they didn't censor anything, it is virtually unchanged. It's actually significantly longer than the original game, which I did not expect. See, this is how you make a remake right here. I'm looking at you, Resident Evil 3. The only things not present from the original would be the Great Knife and insta-kill spray that you got as unlockables after beating the game in a certain way. And sadly, the Born from a Wish story mode where you play as Maria, this was from the Silent Hill 2 director's cut, is not present, but I'm pretty sure that they're gonna add it later. But other than that and a couple key areas being moved around a bit, all the changes are improvements and additions. And they are incorporated so goddamn well. It is great what they've done with this game. Let's start with the small stuff. They push back the first enemy encounter a bit, which does a good job of letting you take in the town, the atmosphere, and the sound design. As a matter of fact, the beginning of the game has been expanded a lot. I mean, you can't even go into the west side apartments without solving the newly added jukebox puzzle first, which gives you the key. The woodside apartments has a completely new section to it with you entering the other world in it. This is where you fight Pyramid Head for the first time, and it also comes with a bunch of new puzzles and obstacles, and it's just really good. Instead of running into Eddie at the bowling alley, you'll now run into him at a movie theater. You can actually still visit the bowling alley, and it'll have some interesting dialogue as a nod to the original. They removed the abstract daddy clones from being in the hotel, which I think is a good change because it really doesn't make sense lore-wise for them to be there. The labyrinth is no longer complete AIDS. I'm glad that they changed it up. I can't really explain it, just play it yourself, you'll see what I mean. If there is one change I wasn't the biggest fan of, it was to the Brookhaven Hospital. It is a lot longer now and it does drag quite a bit. Definitely the lowest part of the game, but I didn't hate it, it wasn't terrible. Alright, that's enough about the small stuff. If I keep going, I'm gonna be here all day, so let's move on to the more narrative changes. One of the better examples of improvements they've made to the original is the entire Heaven's Night scene. In the original game, you would just kind of walk through it, take in the music and atmosphere, but that was about it. While in the remake, they added an entire new cutscene with tons of dialogue and everything.
Am I crazy? You know, for thinking she could be here.
Crazy is one word for it, I guess. I can think of another.
What's that?
Hopeful.
I loved this cutscene, and the little nod to the interactable liquor bottles from the original, further implying that James has a drinking problem, is just so good. As I mentioned before, Eddie is so much better in this game, not just his boss fight, but all his cutscenes in general, and I love the little nods with the pizza boxes.
Ugh. This town's full of monsters. Who could just sit here and eat pizza?
10 out of 10. Jokes aside, they made Eddie absolutely terrifying in this game. He was creepy in the original game, don't get me wrong, but in the remake, I get some full-blown Homelander vibes from him. And then after killing him, James looking at his hands just like how he did in the very beginning of the game, which has implications. It's just so well done. I love it. Maria is a lot more talkative and will comment on things that you do while she's traveling with you. In general, there's just a lot more to Maria throughout this remake, and it really helps drive home the fact that she can't help what she is. James has this very blank, dead inside, cold demeanor throughout the whole game, which I think fits very nicely. And Angela and Laura haven't really been changed much at all, but honestly, they were fine how they were, so I'm okay with it. What truly does improve all the characters though is the voice acting. I think the entire cast knocked it out of the park. It's fantastic. And let's not forget about the music. Silent Hill 2 soundtrack is a banger. It is a little bit different from the original game. They're still the same songs, but they're just orchestrated a little bit differently, and honestly, I like them both equally. I don't think one is better than the other. Overall, the game and its soul were handled with the utmost respect. Bloober did a very, very good job with this remake. And if it wasn't for the overuse of the combat killing a lot of the tension, I would say that this remake was perfect, but sadly, it does have some flaws, so I can't really call it perfect. But the original wasn't perfect either, and honestly, I love the remake just as much as I love the original. I just gotta be honest. Silent Hill 2 is a game that really does mean a lot to me. It's a staple of my childhood, and if I'm being honest, I had absolutely no doubt in my mind that this remake was gonna be shit. I did not believe Bloober had what it took, and here they are making me eat my own words. And I gotta be honest, just like Resident Evil 2 Remake, I think Silent Hill 2 Remake sets the standard for what a remake should be. Hats off to you, Bloober. You guys proved me wrong, and I'm glad you did. Alright, I gotta go. I'm getting emotional. I don't even know why. Bloober, you guys knocked it out of the park. I could not be happier with how this game turned out. It's fantastic. I had a great time. I loved it. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Hello?
I'm over here stroking my